Hello, I'm Dr. Chris Salierno, Chief Editor of Dental Economics, and this is DE's Recall Visit, where we look at some of our favorite articles from the most recent issue of Dental Economics. So the August edition is a theme on overhead and reducing practice overhead in particular. And I think that the centerpiece really is Dr. Roger Levin's article entitled, How Does Your Overhead Compare to National Averages? So joining me today is Dr. Roger Levin. Roger, thank you for joining us.
Chris, it's great to be with you. I've been looking forward to this.
Terrific. So right off the top, let's be very clear what we're talking about when we say the word overhead, because this is a misused term in my opinion. Does it include staff? Does it include materials? What kind of things are included in overhead? What's your definition?
Well, Chris, that's a really great question. I get that all the time in the seminars that I present. What is overhead? And the best definition of overhead is everything except that which goes to the doctor. If a doctor is going to really understand their practice, then every expense that does not go directly to the doctor should be considered overhead in the practice. And if that's consistently followed, you can really understand where money is being spent and where income is being accumulated.
Terrific. Thank you. So if it's not going in my pocket, it's overhead. That's a great, very, very simple definition.
Exactly.
So your research shows that the average overhead you found, the Levin Group always does tremendous research, and thank you for publishing it with Dental Economics routinely. So you found that the average overhead nationally for general dentists and specialists, the national overhead was almost 75%, which you say is way too high. Now, casually, at study clubs or dental society meetings, you'll hear dentists say, yeah, you know, I try to keep my overhead around 70%. That's what dentists should aim for. But according to the numbers that you're sharing, your goals, even that's too high. So where should we be with these numbers?
Okay, so let's start with the reality. Levin Group has a program where we perform these one-day practice analyses all over the country. And dentists are continually shocked when we tell them what their overhead really is. A lot of them think they're at 60% or 65%. The majority are running in the mid-70s. And if you really think about it, that's why dentists are now retiring 8 to 10 years longer, which is information we've also published in Dental Economics. So 75%, everybody would agree, is out of control, way too high. But even if they get it down to 70 or 68, that's also too high. For every 1% we can lower overhead, the doctor picks up $1,000 of income for every $100,000 of production. So an $800,000 practice where overhead is 8% too high, that doctor is losing $64,000 a year of income. This is shocking to doctors when we show them this, when we do these analyses. So I would like to see general dentist overhead at about 59%. And then the specialties have a range. Ortho, oral surgery, and pedo range about 49 to 50%. Perio's 51%. Pros is very difficult because they have very high lab expenses. So often we can get them at about 64%. Their national average is 71%. And then the winner is the endodontist at 42%. And if you'll pardon my joke, that's because they only have one burr. So they're the winner in overhead.
Terrific. Well, so in your courses, in your seminars, in your coaching and consulting, you discuss strategies for reducing overhead. What's one that you can share very quickly here for dentists that they could implement immediately?
Right, and what you have to do whenever you're looking at overhead reduction, and I don't think we've talked about this, but I'm personally doing tremendous research in this area, a great deal of which I will publish in future dental economics issues and surveys. But the reality is you've got to start with the biggest expenses. So a quick answer is look at your staff. Staff overhead is rising. Inflation has gone up dramatically since 2009. But when I say dramatically, dental expenses have gone up almost 3 times inflation. So, you know, staff members want to be reimbursed well. They should be reimbursed well, but many doctors have too many staff and don't realize it, or they're paying increases every year and they have long-term staff and they're not thinking about what the percentage of overhead is, and they're no longer getting the full return on investment. So you could do something as simple as freezing salary increases and adding bonus systems based on production and profit increases where everybody wins if the practice grows, but the doctor doesn't continue to get penalized if the practice doesn't grow. And I'll make one final point that nobody talks about, and I'm now talking about a lot. Every dollar the practice spends unnecessarily can now be correlated to an absolute number, how many minutes, days, weeks, or years of extra time that doctor will have to remain in practice in order to reach financial independence. And when dentists are now retiring closer to 70 years of age, and that's going up on a regular basis, that's a concern. So overhead is serious, and the place to begin is looking at your largest expense, your staff. We love our staff, but we also need to understand the ROI factor, return on investment of our staff.
Well, that's tremendous advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Levin. And I hope everyone else will pick up your issue, your August issue, where you can read more in detail about Dr. Levin's research. Thank you so much for all the work that you do in the Levin Group. We really appreciate your contributions to the profession. And everyone, thank you for watching. We'll see you at the next recall visit.